On this episode of China Uncensored, how did the CCP identify American CIA operatives in China? I guess the dark suits and glasses gave it away. Everything is awesome when you're in China, and the CCP tells you it's awesome. And finally, America drops a bomb in China. The new Star Wars movie. This is China Uncensored. Hi, welcome to China Uncensored. I'm your host, Chris Chappell. Last year, we reported the revelation that the Chinese Communist Party had more or less successfully executed or imprisoned the CIA's entire spy ring in China. Now, I'm not saying I support CIA operations, but I'm definitely opposed to the killing of agents. Not cool, CCP. But it was a mystery how the Chinese regime got those names and details of those CIA informants. Was it hackers? Was it a mole? Was it a hacker mole? Well, the CIA just arrested a former CIA agent they think may have been responsible. 53-year-old Jerry Chun-Ching Lee lives in Hong Kong, but was apprehended on Monday when he traveled to John F. Kennedy Airport in New York. Just one more reason you should never fly into JFK. But just because there's a little espionage and murder between the US and China, that doesn't mean we can't do business together. Google has opened its third office in China, in the manufacturing city of Shenzhen. You know, Google, the company that ended its China business operations in 2010 because they were sick and tired of the Chinese regime forcing them to censor search results and the Chinese regime hacking them. Lousy hacker moles. But it's been 8 years, plenty of time to forget all the bad parts. It's like looking back to 2010 and thinking, yeah, The Expendables was a pretty cool movie, I guess. You guess? Do you not remember how the plot made no sense? And how Arnold Schwarzenegger was only in it for like 2 minutes after being in all the previews? What a ripoff. Anyway, Google is good with searches, but bad with memory. So they figured it was time for a sequel and set up this new office in Shenzhen. The office itself isn't a big deal. It's just a workspace for Google staff who are already traveling back and forth to China. But it highlights how Google is expanding its operations there. Google is pushing to manufacture more hardware in China. Google's also opening an artificial intelligence research center in China, which, to me, doesn't seem too smart. And Google isn't the only Western company trying to make inroads. Lego is partnering with Chinese tech company Tencent to make online games. Obviously, Lego will have to make some changes to operate in China. For instance, deviating from the Lego instructions will now be a crime. And the Chinese edition of the Lego movie has no evil government overlord. It just ends 5 minutes in with the song, "Everything is Awesome." According to India's Economic Times, these satellite photos show a buildup of the Chinese military, including armored tanks along the North Doklam Plateau. That's very close to disputed territory between China and Bhutan. It was the site of a months-long border conflict between China, Bhutan, and India. Is it already time for another border dispute between China and India? We'll keep an eye on the situation to see how it develops. You know what a requirement for being a lawyer in China is? Love the Chinese Communist Party. And if you don't, you can't be a lawyer. This is ridiculous. Doesn't the Chinese regime know lawyers are incapable of feeling love? This is Yu Wensheng. He's a Chinese human rights lawyer who has criticized the Chinese leadership. But several months ago, he tried to open up his own law firm. This is what Beijing authorities told him in a letter. Through investigations, this organization found you have openly expressed opposition to the Communist Party's leadership. And now, they've taken away his license. According to the BBC, since 2015, more than 300 lawyers, legal assistants, and activists have been questioned, and more than 24 have been formally investigated. And in a move that's sure not to anger Muslims around the world, the Chinese government authorities have banned Muslim children from attending religious events during winter break. The parents were furious, but the kids were like, oh no, I guess I'll have to go outside and play. Speaking of kids, Remember Ice Boy from last week's episode? Well, he's had his 15 minutes of fame because now it's all about Little Lee. At just 7 years old, Little Lee is already working as a delivery man, usually making around 30 stops a day. This has sparked outrage on Chinese social media over child poverty, something the Chinese regime really doesn't want people talking about. Lee's father is presumed dead, and his mother abandoned him for her other family. He's being raised by an old colleague of his father's who, you guessed it, works as a delivery man. He tried to get Lee registered to go to school, but couldn't because of China's strict household registration program. Now that the internet has discovered Little Lee, local authorities have moved him to an orphanage. Hopefully now Little Lee will get to attend school and be bored like all the other kids. Speaking of poverty, another Chinese city has admitted it faked economic data. Baotou in China's Inner Mongolia region actually made about half as much revenue as local officials had reported. And finally, in entertainment news, The Last Jedi bombed so badly in China, it was pulled from theaters. They blamed bad reviews and the fact that the original Star Wars trilogy was banned in China for decades. But I think the real reason The Last Jedi bombed is Chinese people don't like porgs. What do you think? Leave your comments below. Thanks for watching this episode of China Uncensored. Once again, I'm your host, Chris Chappell. See you next time.